All right, everyone. Hello. Welcome today to our webinar. We're going to give everyone just a few minutes to get in, kind of get settled. In the meantime, if you want to put in the chat where you're joining us from, say hello, all that good stuff, that would be great. Maybe what your favorite Halloween candy was that came to your house yesterday, or your favorite trick-or-treater costume. If you had some fun, Halloween fun yesterday. I know in my world, it's now officially Christmas season.
Did it flip overnight?
It flips overnight. I'm like Mariah. I unthaw on Halloween and ready for Christmas. But
the stores flip over almost instantly. It feels like halfway through yesterday, it's just colors change.
Amazing at how fast it happens. And I think that you Canadians do Thanksgiving right by doing it before Halloween. So then it can truly just be the Christmas season after, or the holiday season after Halloween. But we just, I will say I take the week of Thanksgiving to be Thanksgiving, but before and after in my world is holiday celebrations.
No emails that week then. No emails.
No emails. All right. Well, considering we're just a little past the hour and we want to give Jordan as much time as possible, we'll go ahead and get started. Welcome to part 3 of our 3-part series on Microsoft Purview. Today is Disposition Workflows with Microsoft Purview, and we've got Jordan with us today to kind of wrap up the series. If you want to switch to the next slide for us. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Jennifer Millett, and I'm actually now the Vice President of Event Strategy. My title's outdated there, but that's okay. I handle all 3 of our events, so we love to have you join us at one of our 3 major events throughout the year between Info Next in April, ARMA Canada in May, and then InfoCon in October. We definitely have something for everyone, so consider joining us for one of our events. Also, if you're an ARMA member, thank you for being here and thank you for taking advantage of your membership and all the things that we have to offer. If you're not a member and you'd like to consider becoming one, please go to arma.org to check out all that we have to offer. We also do a monthly ARMA overview webinar the first Wednesday of each month. So the next one coming up is December 6th. And that we had our first one this morning, or we had the November one this morning. And in this webinar, we go over just the ins and outs, what you need to know about ARMA, how to utilize your membership, how to get the most out of it, how to network and connect with other people in the community. So whether you're a member or not, been a member for a long, long time, it's kind of fun to come back and see the new things that we have to offer. Maybe, there's something you've missed. And if you're new to us, come and make sure you're utilizing all the best parts of your membership. All right, we can move on. So a few housekeeping items. First of all, yes, you will get a recording, you will get a copy of the slides, and you'll get your IGP credits in somewhere between 24 to 48 hours after this webinar. Keep an eye on your inbox, and all that information will come that way. Also, for our speaker today, make sure you're putting your questions in the Q&A box. That chat box can go awfully quickly, and we can kind of lose some questions in there. So make sure you're posting your questions in the Q&A box. And then that chat, let's, have a good, healthy conversation about today's content, maybe your own best tips or your own practices or your own experiences with the content. Go ahead and definitely utilize that chat box for that. And again, keep an eye on your inbox for a copy of the slides, the recording, and your IGP credits. All right, next slide. And then I'll just take a quick second to thank Jordan and his team at Cadence Solutions. We, so appreciate our business partners who support us in bringing content and opportunities like this to our community. So we hope that when you're considering services and products for your organization, you support the businesses that support you. And with that, I will turn it over to Jordan.
Excellent. Thank you, Jennifer. All right, so if you've been a part of this for the first 2 in the series, we covered a number of different topics, essentially Purview out of the box with records management, a bit of auto classification in the second session, with Microsoft Syntax and how we can go and auto-classify documents and records, all within the Microsoft tenant, which is a new product they've released in the last year. So the topic today, we're going to go through disposition reviews, and this one may be a little shorter on time than we're running usually, but I did want to carve this out as a specific session and just focus on some of the options, because it's great to have all the setup, but the end game in the end is review and destruction, and we want to make sure that we're well educated in that side of things. So the agenda today, we're going to recap going through some of the retention labels. So if you did miss session one, we'll briefly cover this. We're going to go through the disposition review overview and the different options inside of it. We're going to go through standard disposition reviews, as well as a recently released feature, we'll say within the last probably 8 months now, running a Power Automate flow at the end of a disposition, which really levels Purview up against some of the traditional ECM products. And then, of course, I'm going to talk about limitations. As you know, if you've joined any of the sessions, I'm a practitioner and not just a demonstrator. I actually live through the projects with our clients, and we realize limitations all the time. And I want to make sure those are called out clearly for everybody. Alongside me today, quietly answering the chat and Q&A is Sang Lee, one of our Microsoft practice leads here at Cadence. So if you do have off-the-cuff questions, drop them right into that Q&A, and Sang will respond right away. So we can get started with that. All right, so going through on the retention label side of things, there's a number of different steps to go through and create that retention label. At the end of creating that retention label, there's a number of different actions that we can take. And the actions is really what we're looking for at the end. So in the previous sessions, we went through and created those retention labels. I'll briefly blast through one in a few moments. But what I do want to cover is the finish or the period at the end of that retention label, and what we actually want to do when the retention period is up. So the out-of-the-box options from Microsoft Purview, you really have 5 options. Can we delete the items automatically? So we want to permanently remove those labeled items. Do we want to start a disposition review? Do we want to change the label? Do we want to run a Power Automate flow, essentially connected to do whatever you want to do within the tenant, the environment, and the ecosystem? Or do we want to deactivate retention settings? I'm going to focus on the middle 3 today. We're going to focus on starting a disposition review, changing the label, and running a Power Automate flow. And it's going to be a mix of slide deck and then actually showing off the functionality working formally through a demonstration. So we'll start with the disposition review side of things. When we go through and start a disposition review, there's 2 main kind of components to it. There's stages and there's reviewers. So you can have a number of different stages, up to 5, and you can have up to 10 reviewers per stage. So the intent of this, it may come and stem from the engineering side of previous record systems, where you may have active to inactive to destroy, or active to inactive records to archived in a different location, you know, if you're doing more of the physical move. But that's where you can create those stages. If you're a public sector, maybe state governed entity, and you do have to submit to another body or corporate body for approval of destruction of records, you work with some public utilities that have to submit to the state. You could actually create those out in stages in your review as well. So stage 1, send off to review to internal, we call them records representatives in each department, maybe a director or an exec assistant, to authorize the destruction. You may have to fill out a form. Stage 2 may be seeking approval from that governance body, so that could be the state. Stage 3 could be coming back after approval from the state and actually performing that destruction on the review. So a couple of different ways you can do that. I'll cover some of the, little tidbits with it. So you can have up to 5 stages. I've never really seen it go past maybe 7 in reality. So in terms of having to seek multiple approvals, you can have 10 reviewers per stage, or I think is plenty. If we're reviewing beyond that, we should probably look at not utilizing this functionality, but look at more of using the Power Automate flow type of functionality, where we may be assigning to a group, seeking either unanimous or individual approval. Within each individual stage of disposition, any of the users for that stage can take action for the item at the end of its retention period. And these users can also add other users to their disposition review stage. So I get an assignment, I want to include Sang, I want to include Jen and Megan. I can add them as well to my review stage. So a couple of things to keep in mind. When it's ready for me to go through and perform anything to do with the disposition, I will get an email from Microsoft, and this is the out of the box one, and I'll show you how you can actually change these as well. And this essentially is just notifying me that I have a disposition, I have items on the disposition page to review, and I can click on that link and it will take me off to the disposition page to preview those items as well as perform the duties that I'm asked of: review, approve, relabel, or destroy. I'm just going to pop out of the slide deck, jump into the environment here. I'm going to jump right into the dispositions page. I will just jump to this one here to show off the mail that comes in. So this is one of our demo accounts here. This is a notification saying I have 16 items to review with regards to a major incident. I may have other ones that come in throughout time, but they're all essentially automated from Microsoft Purview when it comes up for destruction. Inside of here, if I want to actually go in and look at some of the items that are up for pending disposition, I can see there was around 1,200 available. Give this a second. This always takes a little second to load here on the left, so patience is key on it actually putting the listing here. So I'm just going to select the second item in the list. It's going to go through and actually show the content. We can go through and preview those items. And now I have the option based on my permissions to either pop this out into a full preview mode if I actually want to go through and look at this in more of a full screen side of things. Very boring document. I can approve the disposal of this. I can relabel this at this time. I can extend it, or I can add reviewers. So previously I did mention that if I'm a reviewer, I'm also able to add reviewers. If I want to go through and extend this, I can choose how long to extend this. One feature request I'd like to see is, hey, put this on hold, please. So extending is one thing, but maybe flagging this as this needs to be on a legal hold. So we can choose to extend this for a out of the box 3 months, 6 months, 1 year, or pick a custom date. So maybe we just want to push this to the end of the year, end of next year. We can go through and choose to relabel this item. If we feel it's mislabeled, we can go through and pick a new label for the item as well. I run through. We can go through and add reviewers or approve disposal as well. So I'll just add reviewers on this one. I'm going to add my friend Adele. We can push that through as well off to Adele. She will get an assignment as well. So a couple options here. Anything that's been disposed under this, you can see here as well. So we can see when the review started, progress, it's permanently deleted, and all the content relevant to it and where it lived previously. Just to back all the way up on this one and look in the file plan, if I just go through and create a label quickly, I'll just put in sample label and run it all the way to the period stage here. Love the 7-year cliche. These are the items here. So if you do want to go through and start that disposition review, and you actually do want to create those stages, this is where you can go through and add the stages. So let's say department approval. And let's say this goes off to lead. Add another stage, let's say state approval, and we have a representative internally that will coordinate that with the state, and let's say that's Adele. We can build out those stages. One feature that I'm going to mention in a second is this automatic stage approval. And this is essentially your ability to be passive aggressive with your disposition. And OpenText did a really good job of this previously in their review cycle. You could set the number of days before something would be automatically approved and the default status. Is it approved by default or is it pending by default? So does the user have to explicitly say yes, destroy this, or do we have good IM and RM policy in our organization? We may have in our policy saying so many days after the retention schedule has met its criteria, we're allowed to automatically approve or automatically dispose of that content without approval. So it really depends on your aggressiveness in the organization and how active your user base, your records representatives will be in terms of getting through the disposition cycle. So we've set it to a default of 14 days in each stage. We have those stages. So I won't go through and create this label, but we can actually just go through, create this label, and we've created a couple different stages with reviewers and also auto approval if they do sit on their hands and not participate appropriately. On the auto approval side of things, so I mentioned you can optionally set a time period for auto approval. The default's 14 days, so essentially they have 2 weeks to do anything. The only time we see this kind of get folks in trouble is around that holiday season, where if this thing starts up on December 20th and folks aren't really around till the new year, that may be something you look to set a little longer. But there are a few times of the year where it just is absences or year ends hitting and they're just not going to be able to participate. And if auto approval is what you want to do and you want to set that aggression level, this is where you can do it. If the reviewer doesn't act, then it automatically moves on to the next stage. If it is at the final stage, then it's automatically disposed. So if you do want to go through and create a bit of an auto approval, passive aggressive tone to your disposition review, but give yourself the safety net of don't auto approve and destroy, you can set the stage, the final stage, back to yourself if you're the records manager, and have it kind of sit with you before you approve final destruction. So something to kind of keep in mind there. On the permission side of things, mailboxes to show in the disposition review must have at least 10 megabytes of data to support disposition reviews. So if you had a new hire come in, they left after 3 days, they didn't really do much at their job, didn't email anybody, didn't send an attachment or anything to really break that 10 megabytes, the mailbox isn't going to show in the disposition review. Administrators can see an overview of all the pending dispositions in the Overview tab. Reviewers can only see their own items in pending dispositions. So be very careful with that if you're going through and configuring that and you do have those questions, by all means ask them today or drop them in the Q&A chat right now. The next one I'm going to go through is changing the label. So changing the label, we can essentially daisy chain labels to labels, and this feature came out within the last 12 months or so as well. We can extend the period by choosing an existing label to replace with this one. So again, if we're doing the disposition review of the active to inactive, in the physical world, this is really, there were the records in a filing cabinet in the department, they were active, they would be boxed and moved into a file room, deemed inactive or archived. They would wait out their retention period and then proceed to disposition review and destruction. In the electronic world, we can use this not only in a records capacity, but also in an IT capacity to do this. So if we're able to change the label, we may be able to go and now hook and archive things officially, move this potentially out of the SharePoint site, out of OneDrive, archive it separately, and actually electronically, I was going to say physically move those files, those electronic files, and put them somewhere else. Maybe we're breaking some of the cost thresholds with SharePoint in terms of what's in our licensing agreement for data storage allowed, and we want to move that. This is where you can start using the labels. So they're changing the labels. Let's leave it for 5 years here. We know it's active, but we know it's maybe asset management. We have life of the asset. Let's archive that content by changing the label and then use potentially Power Automate to grab that content and put it into maybe a third-party backup solution or archive solution, as well as, or in addition to Microsoft's archiving capabilities that will be announced shortly. So a few tidbits with changing the label. You can't relabel a regulatory record, but the replacement label can be configured to mark the content as a regulatory record. So I touched on this in the first one, where regulatory record is a very, very, very strict, and there's not a lot that can be changed once you've used that label and it's applied to content. So if you weren't in the first series, go back and check out the video from the first series. I believe it's on ARMA's YouTube. And there's a slide deck associated with that that really goes through the differences between the label types. You won't be able to delete a retention label that's selected as a replacement label. So even though there may be no content currently labeled or tagged with that label is locked in because it's connected to another label and the end of the cycle. You can choose a replacement label that's configured to apply to another replacement label. So we can, again, connect them there. And there's no limit to the number of replacement labels an item can have. So this is like the movie Inception, where you can have a label after a label after a label and just keep going now. There's obviously a usability concern there if you keep doing that, but you can go through and choose that. So I'm just going to break out of this and I'll go right back into Purview quickly. Just back up here and choose changing the label. So we can extend this period by choosing a replacement label, and really it's just as simple as going through, picking our next label, and connecting the label we're creating at the end of this period, connecting it to another label that we've already created. So you do have to create it kind of bottom up as opposed to top down when you're building in your retention schedule into Purview. The one we were kind of most excited about at Cadence was the ability to go through and actually connect this to, say, a formal workflow engine so we can do more complex workflows. So we've worked with a lot of organizations that really spider that approval process out, some almost to a detriment where everything goes out to a lot of different departments and it takes a while for that approval to come back so we can proceed. We do kind of recommend you do it at a departmental level and run these labels and dispositions at that level. But because we can do it with Power Automate, it gives us the ability to actually go through and create almost magic with our approval cycle, which wasn't possible prior to that feature being released. I'll break off quickly and go through some of the demonstration on that capability. So running that flow is essentially selecting a flow that already exists, and that's the easy part, right? Connecting the flow. The magic is really what you do inside of that flow. So these are 3 flows that we have inside of our demo environment, inside of the Power Automate functionality in there. I can apply and connect this and simply just click next and create my label if I like. I'm going to actually show you the Power Automate side of things and show you some of the flows here. So inside of here, if I do want to go through and create a new flow, the trigger I'm looking for, you just type in label. When an item reaches the end of its retention period, this is the hook. So this is the connectivity layer between, I can just go back. Running a Power Automate flow, connecting that flow, essentially when the dates hit and the time is right, it's going to go over and run this flow that we're going to build out. Now, I'm not going to go and build a whole formal flow out here, but there are a few nice little tips and tricks I like in here. So one is with teams. So we can actually go through and approval. We can start and wait for an approval in Teams. So if we actually want to go through, we have a couple different options. So again, are we doing this unanimously? Everyone must approve. Are we just going to assign this to a group and pick one person and say, anybody in the executive team can approve this? We're happy to have anybody's approval and authority to move on to the next stage in our approval cycle. We can title this all. This will actually show in Teams as an approval. So in the desktop app, you will see an approvals tab. I think we did a ARMA presentation on this a while back, maybe with contract management, where we went through and did this. So we can say disposition approval. And much like getting that email message I showed at the start, we can go through and assign this to somebody, but give it a little more inside their day approval, where it's actually going to pop on Teams, and you can see that there. So if we want to go through and do a number of different advanced options, we can add different attachments. If we actually want to list things, you can connect back to what's been pushed out of Purview into this trigger item at the top, the Purview icon on the first step here, and actually go through and do that. The beauty of Power Automate as well is you just have access to do so many different things. If we want to, give them a summary in Excel of this as opposed to a bunch of different documents, or bubble that up to a site or a document library level where we know all this content's coming out of a site or doc library, and we're not asking them to go through and approve all 5,000 documents at once. We actually want them to go through and approve the site itself. This is your opportunity to kind of do that at a higher level, and Flow is really your magic to be able to do that. So again, Sang and I here at Cadence, we're excited to have this feature released, and we were kind of clamoring for it for quite a while. So all different ways. If you're not familiar with Flow and you're in the records side of things, I don't think you need to be an expert at this, but it's good to know enough that you could guide someone in your organization or a vendor to kind of craft a solution you have in mind for approval. So however you were doing that prior to the electronic systems taking over, if it was a cover sheet that you would have everybody sign, you should mimic that as best you can. In this, if you have a more complex approval and the standard disposition review and assign functionality isn't going to work for your organization. Where this actually sits in Teams, I'll see if I can just open Teams here. We'll do this side. You're going to see this approvals icon. So on the approval side of things, we did a bunch of different contract work, as I mentioned previously. They'll actually pop into Teams here. And if you're doing sidebar here, but DocuSign and Adobe Sign, and soon to be Microsoft Signature, that can all be put in here as well into the Teams approvals, quote unquote, app that is embedded into Teams, both in the browser as well as on the desktop. So a couple different functions there, but this connecting to Flow is the catch-all and the we'll say the advanced workflow engine that comes with connecting to Purview now. So if you want to connect these together, you can change the label, and then on another label you can have that label call the flow as well. So you may go through a couple different variations of this. Just going to jump into Purview and cover some of the tenant features. Now, up in the top right, just did that maybe too quick. Up in the top right, we have records management settings. And underneath those settings, we have the ability of setting our messaging that goes out in our email. So that email I showed previously at the start, we can craft the body of that message. We can craft the nagging reminder emails as well. So, hi, this has been more than 7 days. You can see the 7 days here. Why have you not done your approval? So these are out of the box settings just right in the records management area. And then top right, records management settings. On the retention label side of things, you can configure record versioning, allow editing of properties, and essentially when SharePoint or OneDrive users delete items for retention, you're able to retain a secure copy. Essentially, you're looking at the preservation hold library here. So keep in mind, these apply to all users. So beware before you go in and change any of these settings. And if you do have a test environment, by all means, give it a test there before you run off and do it here in a production state. So a couple other limitations. We recently released an article on this as well. So you can have 1,000 labels per tenant. So tenant, if you're not familiar with that terminology, is your subscription to Microsoft 365. So if you're a very large organization, you got 100,000 employees or something, you would have one tenant. If you're a small municipality, you would have one tenant as well. The other limitation is 10,000 policies per tenant. That is more than sufficient. Now, again, the difference between policies and labels, policies are at the site level. Labels are applied to individual items that can be within that site or within that library. 16 million items in either of the following disposition review states: pending disposition or approved disposition. So that's significant. If you're running dispositions of that size frequently, I would look at increasing, pardon the pun, but increasing your cadence on that. So you're not pushing that volume all at once. We've seen heavy lifting by clients when they first get an electronic records management system and they haven't done disposition prior. You do the migration of data, all the dates are preserved. They go into Purview, the disposition engine hits, and you got a lot of work to do to get the first purge out of the system, because really it's never been done in the org. One client we worked with, it took her 4 years to get through the backlog, which was about 35 years in real time, to go through and obtain the approvals to perform the destruction. A few other limitations I mentioned previously. So in disposition reviewing, there's 10 reviewers per disposition in any combination, and 200 reviewers per tenant in any combination of individual users and mail-enabled groups. So this is where Power Automate may come into play as well. So it eliminates or circumvents these limitations by connecting it to a more formal workflow engine. So I'll wrap up with a few things, then we'll open it up for questions. This one was a bit shorter than anticipated, which is okay. We got lots of time for questions. We do run formal training at Cadence here on Purview. Classes have been quite full the last couple of months, so our next one's coming up in December. It's 4 half days and it's hands-on. So we're not sitting here and doing lecture training or even like this webinar is. You actually access to your own environment and go through and participate and set up labels, dispositions, and go through all of the terminology as well in terms of Microsoft Purview and records management within SharePoint. I'll give a shout out here to Arma. So tomorrow they'll send out all the instructions on how to access the slides. There'll be a PDF copy of those, your IGP credits, and of course the webinar recording will go to their YouTube. This is my contact info. Should you have any questions, websites there, I'm all over LinkedIn as well. If you do want to connect there, by all means, these will be in the slide deck, so you can click on a link or a QR code, something there. I just want to say thanks for tuning into the 3 presentations over the course of this series, which was kind of a blitz in about 6 or 8 weeks. I will turn it over to either Megan or Jen to kind of coordinate the Q&A if there's any coming in, or Sang, if you want to jump off mute and see if there's any questions we can answer.
Yes, of course. If you have any more questions, be sure to also put them into the Q&A, and then we will start answering these live. So the first question is, what if an item is on hold? Is that ignored in the disposition process?
I see Sang typing vigorously on that one.
It looks like he is getting on.
I'll give him a second.
Yeah,
Sang, do you want to unmute? There we go.
Yeah, for sure. So there are a lot of questions, so it's just it was taking me some time to answer them all, but the items on hold should take precedence. So this actually, somebody asked the same question as well. So anything that's on hold takes precedence. So even if it's in the disposition process, it should not get deleted.
So on my screen, can you guys actually see the question Q&A from Zoom, or does Zoom block that out? It's right in the middle of my screen. Doesn't sound like it.
Looks like we are getting mixed responses on that.
Okay, so I got it shared on the screen, but
it looks like mostly no.
Mostly no. Okay, can you see it, Megan?
No.
You can't see it either. So Zoom eliminates their own pop-up here. So
I believe. So the next question is, do you recommend doing the multiple labels for the same record series if you need different groups to sign off on the record series?
I wouldn't go with that approach. If it's different groups, so let's say it's an employee personnel record and HR is going to sign it off, legal is going to sign it off, and maybe the direct report is going to sign it off or something, I would actually just jump right into the Power Automate side of things. That will give you access to do the direct report. I would actually also go, and if that was not going to go to a direct report, I would just look at doing the stages in the standard review as opposed to multiple labels. I'll grab the next one here. Can the labels change permissions of documents associated with them? Yes and no, and saying you can correct me, but if it's a regulatory label, yes, permissions will change in terms of users cannot do things they would be doing prior. So they can be locked, unlocked, they can't change metadata. If we're talking about specific access rights, if you go into Flow and Power Automate, you can really do anything you like. So if that was a requirement, it can be accomplished. If you're just looking at doing that out of the box with some checkboxes, it would be based on the label. Sang, I'll let you jump in on that as well.
No, that's pretty much it. So we can change permission based on the restricting the documents, like if we apply a label, we can make it so that it's read only. But just if you want to customize the permission further, that would be more so on the Power Automate side.
Great.
Excellent. How can I get reporting essentially out of this? So I'll second that. Saying, do you want to take that? I'm going to go off into the Power BI graph API side of things, which is pretty deep. But
which question is that?
How can I get a disposition report that shows the file location of the file, trigger date, and reviewer in one spot?
Oh, so in order for you to create a disposition report like that, that would be a custom report, whether through Power BI, or you can extract the information of the disposition through the disposition review tab. So once you get those files, you can also create your own custom kind of a spreadsheet feeding that data in so that you have your own customized report. So there's multiple ways to do it. It's just you get the raw data of the disposed items. So it's a custom solution.
Next one would be, would you have to create a different flow for each department or label? Once they approve in Teams, will the disposition action take place in Purview?
You have to create a different flow for each department or label once they approve in Teams. So once they approve in Teams and the flow is complete, it will take action in Purview. The answer on different flow for each department is it depends. If you're building a label, it's likely to the record series for that content, which I'm not sure the approval cycle, but let's use the HR to legal example based on a record series being employee files or terminated employees. That may go through 2 departments, but still be one label and still be one flow. So we start the disposition process, we terminate someone, it goes through and runs the clock out, it starts the flow, it goes to HR, they approve, it goes to legal in the same flow, they approve, the flow is complete, the destruction takes place.
And one additional thing that we can really do with Power Automate is if we decide that based on the site that the document is sitting, we wanted to route it to a different disposition reviewer, we can do that as well because we get the information of which site it's coming from. So if it's from like an HR site, we can say that it should be routed to HR, whereas if it's from legal, it routes to legal first. So that's also an option.
So Sang, I'll jump into some of these limitation ones. So one question in from Thomas was, can you handle disposition actions in bulk with Power Automate? For example, approve disposal for 15,000 items.
No, you should be able to. So we implemented something similar for a different client. So what we have done is to create a Power Automate flow that checks the retention labels, and when they are up for disposal, we could create the Power Automate to bulk dispose all the items. But if you are just disposing and if you don't need to do the review process, you can always select the disposition process, delete the files without reviewing. So that's also an option as well.
Thank you, Sang. I'm going to hit you with it just disappeared. There we go. In terms of limitations from the GUI, a reviewer can only prove close to 500 items at a time. Is that correct? Is there any workaround for that?
I believe there's not a workaround that for the moment. But if you are just selecting 500 items at a time and disposing it right away without reviewing what the items are, then there might be a better way to review the disposition process, because
I would
you're not,
agree.
yeah, we're not really reviewing it at all at that point. So
Yeah, and I'd probably circle back to the policy inside the organization as in information management policy, not records policy. If this content is all within a doc library or within a site, I would seek approval at that level. And that may not be as natural in the disposition cycle, but could be something that could be created through flow to say, I'm seeking approval to eliminate the birthday party picture site because every month there's just more stuff going on there and we don't need to keep it for this long. I'll take this one on legal holds. Is it easy to apply holds to a large group of records eligible for disposition? So it's easy to apply that on holds in general. In terms of what's on disposition, I don't believe so. And that is one of the potential gaps there, saying, I don't know if you know functionality for that one. Essentially like our other product we use all the time, where instead of destruction or approve or reject, we want to say hold. I don't believe there's a function for that.
no, unfortunately, there's no function for that at the moment. But you can always kind of build a custom process where you get the list of items to be disposed and place them on hold instead. So we can
Yeah,
always
I'm like that. Who asked that? Anonymous. I can't even give you credit, but if I jump into flow, like, and I sound like I'm on repeat here with flow, but if we do end up with the approval side of things, where's this option? It was one of the other ones. You can actually pick which buttons they see for approvals, and it would be like approve, destroy, or put on hold. And I don't just want to use flow as this magic, but it would give you that gap filling capability of going through and saying, I need to put these on a legal hold if they were not on a hold at this point. Where did my Q&A go? Kathleen, if you have two retention labels and want to merge all documents into a third retention label because you're consolidating retention codes, does Microsoft prevent this? So if, maybe to Kathleen, if you're at the end of the cycle, retention period with those two retention labels, I would just change it to the next label using that functionality of changing the label. If you're not at that side of things and you're trying to do this natively prior to the clock striking midnight on those records, I think that would be something we'd have to do through either an API call and saying you're much more technical than me.
That's correct. So if you want to merge all the all the retention labels, and it also depends on what kind of retention label they applied. So for instance, if you guys were actually using a regulatory retention label, once you apply that kind of retention label, you won't be able to replace it with any other label. So Microsoft will prevent it. But otherwise, if it is a different retention label type, like a regular or record label, you should be able to replace it with a different one. But a recommendation would be to let the ones that are currently labeled live through its life cycle, and moving forward with the new items, new documents, to label it using the ones that you have consolidated.
Anonymous, that's another question. Can you merge or drag and drop from Enterprise Connect to Purview? So if they're referring to the OpenText product Enterprise Connect, that'd be a kind of an odd scenario. It would be more of a drag and drop into SharePoint, let Purview connect into SharePoint and do its magic on the retention side of things.
Right. So you can't really drag and drop a document from Enterprise Connect to Purview, but as Jordan said, you can drag and drop a document to SharePoint Online, and Purview applies retention labels and retention on SharePoint Online. So it can work that way.
I'll ask you one from Carolyn here saying, if one label is used by different departments, can you direct to only one department for disposition approval?
Yes, you can. So basically, when you set up the disposition process, you can just select that disposition reviewer groups to be that one department, the business owner, and that department is the sole reviewer for all these different departments for the disposition approval. So we can set that up with the out-of-box functionality.
We have one from David. Is there a limitation on what types of documents? This thing keeps moving and updating on me. What types of documents can be put through the flow since it's a Microsoft product? Can it do PDFs, engineering files, and graphic files? So I'll comment kind of sideways on that one, David. The syntax capture side of things cannot do engineering files right now if they're a DWG. If they're a PDF as a CAD file, obviously re-rendered, it does work. I'm not sure on DWGs through Purview saying, do you know?
It should be fine because Purview, what Purview essentially is doing is just applying retention labels on the items that are within SharePoint. So it doesn't really matter what type of documents they are, as long as you have those retention label, and then they can be processed using Purview, and the flow would proceed with the disposition review process if we decided to use flow for that.
Thank you, Sang. I got one final question / comment here from Thomas. I'll just read it out so everyone can probably benefit from this. So he says, thanks. The issue we have with our labels is enormous volume. For one label, we have close to 620,000 items pending for review. Based on a policy that needs to be reviewed, it's almost impossible for the business owners to go into the disposition module and review item by item. We currently export all items and create our own customer report, and they can perform sample checks and search for items and projects that are under legal audit or investigation. So kind of death by volume there, Thomas, in terms of what you have to undertake. I'd be curious if that's a recurring annual thing or post maybe project completion thing or backlog prior to a system being in place, because we see a lot of that in the backlog. If that's recurring, then I think we got to go take a look at the overarching IM/RM policy for the organization, because the technology is producing a lot of content there. Mike asked, won't you need a third-party connector to get the records from OpenText to SharePoint with required metadata? If you drag and drop it, doesn't it look brand new? So yes, at any migration, you will need to go and preserve the dates, of course, if we actually want accurate records retention and closure criteria dates on that. Mike, we are also an OpenText partner. We were actually partnered here in 2021, a little dirty secret from us. So we actually have an extractor from OpenText that imports into SharePoint and preserves those dates. We also have one that comes off of file shares to make sure that we're preserving things like the create and modified date and the original author. So we can use that metadata in the retention period and disposition reviews.
Right, and we have it the other way around as well. So
that's true. We go the other way too. I think we burnt him out on Q&A, Sang. I don't see any more, at least in the formal Q&A box.
I see 3 more actually.
I have 3 on my end too.
All 3 more popped up. If you're receiving a disposition review set of files, are you granted access to those files, or do you only see what you have access to in the system? So Sang, I'll ask that one over to you.
So you actually only see, so there's a special role that you have to be assigned as the content viewer role. So if you don't have that role assigned, even if you're a disposition reviewer, you won't be able to view the content of the item that you're disposing, but you can still perform the disposition review. But once you have that role, you should be able to see the file and the content of the file.
I'll just pull that up here.
And I think we answered, if one label is used by different departments, can you direct to only one department, the business owner, for disposition approval? I think we answered that question saying yes. So I'm just gonna And the last question is, how is UAT monitored? That one would be based on the project and how you set up your UAT environment. So that one, if you do have a more detailed question that you, a specific question for UAT that you have in mind, please fire us an email and we'll be glad to help.
Absolutely. I'll just throw my contact info up there if they do want to reach out. To Arma, will the previous webinars be available for an IGP for IGP credit? So that one's to you, Megan. I believe so.
Yes, I typed yes to her.
So I'm back. I can answer that one too. Yes, if you go back and view any of those previous webinars using that link that we sent earlier, you should be able to get your IGP credit. And if you have troubles getting that because you viewed it later, just email education@armaintl.org and we can get that code for you. All right. Well, we will also make sure everyone has Jordan's information in the post email follow-up so that if there's any additional questions, it looks like there was a really great, Q&A session and chat going on. So definitely some really great information today. So we, definitely thank you for being a part of our session today. We'll get this information out. And again, these sessions will all be available through our new LMS system, which we launched yesterday, kind of soft launch. Secret. I don't know if I was supposed to announce that. Sorry, guys. But it's out there. So if you go to your ARMA account, you can see the new LMS system live. So these will transition to our LMS system where you can access them and view them at any time. Go back and kind of use them as a resource as you need. And like I said, we'll send some links in our post-event email. And until next time, everyone have a great rest of your day, rest of your week. And we hope to see you on a future webinar. Thanks, Jordan.
Thanks, everyone. Take care. Bye-bye.